Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom. How's it going?
Well, Tony, we are almost to June 1st, which means children are home from school. Memberships are renewing at Ohio State websites all across the land. Tony, felt like a great time to remind people that this would be a great time to think about if you wanted to join us at BuckeyeHuddle.com, because we always do this at the end. I thought, you know what? This is the time of year when,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the end of the fiscal year and it's sort of the start of the next fiscal year. So you're not necessarily not everyone's membership renews like at the first football game. Everyone's kind of interested in what's going on over the summer. So if you've got a membership somewhere else, consider adding one at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Or if you've been members of sites that we've been members of at the past, and you're like, hey, I miss Tom and Tony and Kevin and Alex and Mark and Ross and everyone else, miss the whole gang. Well, we're at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and you can be too. If you, as we always like to say, you can try it for a month. You can sign up for a year. If you're not sure, you can just try it for a month. But Tony, it is the price of a lousy chain store pizza. The price of everything else seems to be going up these days. Not BuckeyeHuddle.com. So you can sign up today. Commercial over. Now back to you.
Well, and this month, had the Southern Swing. Mark has now been covering some 7-on-7 stuff. We'll do more of that. June is Ohio State camp, so we'll be on campus there, permitted to be there watching the camps and checking out all of the prospects and talking with them afterwards. And there are a ton in Ohio right now, 2024, 25, 26. So there's still plenty of stuff going on this summer. So yes, check out BuckeyeHuddle.com. The big news, Tom, and this was a complete shocker. Ohio State Notre Dame game time is set for 7:30 p.m. on NBC. When you got this news, did you have to stop your car and pull over?
I didn't. The bridge abutment that I slammed my car into. Yes, total shock. Total shock. Yeah, this is one that I think if you go back, maybe even the last show, we were someone we had a listener question show at one point, and when people were asking about when are we going to know more game times, and there were a couple out. This one was one we were assuming we got kind of a heads up. Hey, they're going to be announcing the first two game times of the year, and we I think both thought the same thing, which was Michigan at noon and Notre Dame at 7:30 on NBC. And then it was Ohio State, Michigan State at 7:30 on NBC. So I was like, okay, well, that was unexpected, but certainly they're going to announce Ohio State, Notre Dame at 7:30 on NBC pretty soon. And then they did. I'm kind of wondering why they waited longer to do that, but it was maybe it took them longer to figure it out than it did for us. I don't know.
Still some wires crossed with the whole NBC Big Ten thing, perhaps. One thing that I did not realize is that this will be Ohio State's fourth game of the year. I did realize that. This will be Notre Dame's fifth game of the year because they opened week 0 in Dublin against Navy, which will be fun. And then their second game is against Eddie George and the Tennessee State Tigers. We know the last time, of course, Eddie George went up against Notre Dame, he vanquished the Irish. The lore has been written about it. There have been songs sung. And then Notre Dame then goes to North Carolina State, and then they host Central Michigan before hosting Ohio State. So this is almost a mid-season game for them, and they're used to that sort of thing, playing big games in mid-season. Ohio State, I mean, I think it comes at a very good time for them. Their fourth game of the year, like nothing will be new at that point. So I don't know that there's an advantage. I'd say there's more of an advantage for Ohio State just because it won't be their first time on the road. It won't be their first time all of these guys are coming out because you saw kind of the nerves and everything last year. So I think this sets up well for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think it sets up reasonably well for both teams because you get that week 1 game and there's always the uncertainty. Last year they start with Notre Dame and it was an exciting start to the season, but you never know. You've got, you have a new coordinator. Like this year, for example, Notre Dame has a new offensive coordinator. They're going to have a new quarterback. Ohio State's going to have a new quarterback. They've got some offensive line changes. So you never know the first game, what's it going to look like. And, the old adage, you never improve more, you improve the most between game 1 and game 2. So, okay, you've kind of got that out of the way. I don't think playing in week 4 for Ohio State is necessarily an advantage for the Buckeyes, but it also you're far enough into the season that Ohio State, this will be the first real test for Ohio State probably. I mean, they've got Indiana before that, Indiana, Youngstown State, and Western Kentucky, which, yeah, okay. But you're far enough into the season that, everyone should be kind of synced up, feeling okay. You're probably not playing a 4-quarter game before that. So, the odds are you're not going to have too many serious injuries at that point. But this is it's a good point of the year for Ohio State to get that game in. They've got the week off after that to kind of rest up after that first real test, and you adjust to what you saw and you learn from Notre Dame. So it's far enough into the season. It probably feels like you have eliminated some of the uncertainty from the beginning of the season. So then it just becomes more of a true talent battle and a individual positional matchup battle. And to me, that feels like that's good news for Ohio State.
Another Friday night NBC game was finally announced. We knew that Penn State and Michigan State were going to be meeting on a Friday on NBC, Black Friday. We had talked about that I think in the last show. And then it comes out on Wednesday that the game is being moved to Ford Field. And it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then it comes out that the game is not part of the Michigan State season ticket package. They're going to refund the people who paid for that game because it was a home game for Michigan State. And so now it's essentially a neutral site game because even Michigan State's official tweet says Michigan State versus Penn State. And the second team listed as the home team, that this is completely odd that they've given up a home game. Now they have 6 other home games, so including Michigan and including Washington. So they're justifying it in that way. Say, hey, look at these other home games you get. But now I think this moves their senior day to like November 4th against Nebraska, and then they have 3 games after that. I don't know why they moved it other than weather concerns, I guess is the main reason, but why do you remove it from the ticket package unless you think you can get more money doing it this way? And we know last year, the last home game for Michigan State, they had like they didn't even sell some of the upper seats. They were like 20,000 under capacity. So it was like in the 50,000s. Ford Field will seat like 65,000. Maybe they're counting on Penn State to come in, and maybe it's cheaper for them. I saw somebody mention this on our message board, saying maybe it's just cheaper for Michigan State right now to not play that game at home and let somebody else cover the costs of whatever those costs are at Ford Field. And does this time all come back to the Mel Tucker contract where they have to pinch every single penny? And when they saw this opportunity, like, well, we don't want to play outside because we've seen daytime games that are really freaking cold at East Lansing. So, like, I didn't have a problem with them going inside, but removing it as a home game is odd to me.
Yeah, I mean, the weather thing, sure, okay. I mean, we were up there in, 2018, and that was one of the colder games that I've attended in person, and that was probably the second weekend in November, and that was mid afternoon. I think that might have been that might have even been a noon. That was a noon kick, as a matter of fact, because that was the one where it was like the Drew Chrisman game, and Drew Chrisman's getting interviewed on the field at the end of the game on national TV because that's a normal thing for a punter. But that was daytime, so that was definitely a noon kick, and that was freezing cold there that day.
November 10th.
November 10th, yeah. So yeah, second weekend in November. So, a couple weeks later, yeah, sure, you could have a genuinely unpleasant afternoon or evening, late night in East Lansing. You get the wind going. It snowed the night before that game in 2018. So yeah, that's all possibilities. So sure, we can talk about the weather. Okay, Tony, what drives every possible decision in college football these days? TV and money. So here's the actual answer. TV and money. TV, they're playing it at night because TV wants them to play at night. Money, a lot of times when you get those early season non-conference games, when Alabama goes to Jerry World to play Miami or whatever, those teams will make $5 million from that game. And so the odds are they're probably getting a deal from Ford Field that, hey, we'll give you X amount of money, or you just don't have the expenses of the day at at the stadium, whatever it is. I'm sure financially it's working out better for Michigan State, and it's an easier sell to get Penn State fans to drive up there. That's what, an hour and a half or so closer to Penn State, so it's a little bit of an easier drive. I'm sure it's easier to get hotels in Detroit than it is in East Lansing. All that, it's in, you can, you buy your tickets now. You don't have, you're much less likely to have, 10,000 students not show up because it's a day after Thanksgiving because students aren't on campus, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm sure it's a lot of that. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of crappy to do this after you've presumably sold your season ticket packages. They've got, Washington, you've got Michigan coming. So like you've got other tentpole kind of games. It's not like you're removing the only game that people would care about, but you're removing a game people would care about. But, from Michigan State's fans' perspective, like you're probably going to buy the season tickets anyway for the Michigan game and for the Washington game. And then you're driving an hour and a half. And, I don't know, have you seen a game in Ford Field? Like it's a nice venue. It's nothing spectacular, but it's a nice venue. It's right downtown Detroit. If you wanted to go and like make that a weekend, you could do that. So, I mean, that's like, it's a perfectly fine decision, but yeah, it's driven by TV and money, just like everything else.
I'm looking at Michigan State's schedule now. Their first 4 games are at home, and that's September 1st through September 23rd. They are at home just 2 more weeks after that. From September 24th until November 24th, they have just 2 home games, and that's Michigan October 21st, and then Nebraska November 4th. So they just basically have, after September, 1 home game a month.
That's wild. That's because, I mean, you think about it, like it doesn't really start feeling like football season until about October 1st, usually. It's, that September 23rd, that's still sometimes an 80-degree day. And, and we've been up there. We were up there last year for a game in early to mid-October, and the leaves are changing and it's 50 degrees and it feels like a football day. And it's like, oh man, go back to the photo gallery I put up that day, and there's all sorts of pictures from before the game of like bright red leaves on the trees around the Red Cedar River. It's like, man, this is what football should be. It's a great day. And then, you're going to have like one of those, and then it gets cold in November, and then you're done. And, I think if you're going to, we mentioned TV and money being what drives all the stuff. Senior Day on November 4th. We can talk all about how much our program values the contributions of our seniors and all that kind of stuff. Like, if you're putting Senior Day on November 4th or whatever you said it was, like, I mean, we value your contributions. Thank you for your contributions, but they're not financial contributions in the way that TV is. And so, unless you want to up your NF Tuck contributions, I don't think we're going to be able to do anything about that Senior Day. Sorry about that.
If you're not pitching in on your NIL money back to the university, if you're not giving them a taste, then you can forget your Senior Day.
College football tithing. Let's get it going. 10% back to the university.
All of these Spartans are like, no, I'm not going to give any of my NIL money. And you got like Mel Tucker like, it'd be a shame if something happened to your Senior Day. I would hate to see something happen to it.
I don't think he's Italian, but I mean, I don't know. I haven't like checked his ancestry.com, but yeah, it's it's one of those things where you're kind of like, this is one of these things where it's very easy to say the right thing, and how wonderful and how cherished everyone is, but it's like, I mean, we value your contributions, but not like that, in a different way, in a more intangible way.
Yeah, you don't even get a watch. There's no like your 25-year anniversary thing. It's just like, enjoy Detroit. Other news, Tom. Ohio State offered in-state 2025 quarterback Tavien St. from Bellefontaine. You may say Bellefontaine. You may say Bellefontaine.
Well, Bellefontaine is correct, so you should only say Bellefontaine. That's it's spelled like Bellefontaine, but yes, it is pronounced Bellefontaine. And if you were not familiar with Ohio, it is kind of northwest of Dublin. So Dublin is like a northwest suburb of Columbus. If you keep going up Route 33, You get to Marysville, which is further from Dublin than you think. And then you go a little ways up and you get up to Bellefountain, which is, again, further than you think further than you think. There's a ski area kind of on the way there. Mad River is up there. And also, Tony, what is Bellefountain famous for? A geographical feature in the state of Ohio. What is Bellefountain famous for?
Is it the lowest point or the highest point?
It's one of those. Which one do you think it is?
I feel, well, you said there's some skiing. So if I use logic, I always thought Chillicothe was higher because they've got hills in Chillicothe, but I'll say highest.
Bellefountain is home to Campbell Hill, the highest point in the state of Ohio, located on the campus of a community college of some sort, I believe.
That's an odd name. I want that on a hat.
It's not exactly summiting Everest. You can drive up to a parking lot in the community college and stand there on the top of the hill if you so desire.
And why wouldn't you? Also next door, the largest ball of twine. So now they've offered 2 in-state Ohio quarterbacks. That's what in-state means. Ryan Montgomery, who they had previously offered, and also, of course, Bryce Underwood, I think, is their main target, and he should be. Like, he is a legit national dude. Not that these guys aren't national, because they both have offers from all over the place. Ryan Montgomery recently was either out in Washington or Washington came to see him, but like you see on Twitter every single day, there's a new school at Findlay talking to Ryan Montgomery. And I know they were pretty impressed by what they heard from Washington and the way Washington throws the ball around right now. Like I think that's going to become a place as long as Kalen DeBoer is still there, and who knows how long he'll be there at Washington. But with Tavien St. Clair, I'll just give you a little bit of a rundown right now. He's like in the 300s and like the number 24 quarterback in the composite, the number 26 quarterback in the composite, number 10 player in Ohio, number 332 overall. Offers, and are these camp offers, that sort of thing? They come to camp, like offer from Florida. It's like one of those things. We'll throw our hat in, I think, just because we know you're not going to commit right now, so we'll have some time. Penn State, that's a legit offer. Tennessee has offered. That's a good place for a quarterback. Iowa State, you say what you want, but Florida, Minnesota, Pitt, and obviously Ohio State now as well. So once Ohio State gets in the mix on an in-state kid, we know, like, okay, this is legit. Anything can happen. I just think it's cool that you've got now 2 kids in state that Ohio State wants, because this is something we've been saying for a while, and it does look like they're trying to take 2, is go swing for the fences, but also try to get the best kid in state as well, and you'll have a better chance of keeping kids in state rather than hitting that portal, even though it's not a 100% solution. They're more likely to stay in Columbus if Ohio State is their dream.
Right, and this is something where you go back a couple of years and they were, Drew Aller was, I believe, committed to Penn State. I don't know if he even ever officially had an Ohio State offer. It might have been late, but he was ended up being a very highly ranked prospect, and they went national that class. And then even the current class, Ethan Grunkemeyer is committed to Penn State, and that he's judged, he's viewed as someone who's a pretty significant prospect for 2024. So it's interesting to me that they have kind of thrown their hat in the ring with not 1 but 2 in-state guys in 2025. And the interesting question then is this a change of philosophy? Is this them trying to get 2 quarterbacks for that year? Because Ryan Day's stated preference is to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster at a time. With the way things are going, where guys are leaving pretty consistently after their 3rd year, that happened with Dwayne Haskins, that happened with Justin Fields, that happened with C.J. Stroud, that could happen with Kyle McCord after this coming year. If you guys got guys leaving after your 3rd year, it's basically mathematically impossible to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks unless you're bringing in guys to the transfer portal like they did with Christian Gebbia this year, or you're bringing in 2 quarterbacks in the class. And it's hard to sell national recruits on 2 quarterbacks in a class. That happened with C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller a couple of years ago, but Miller only stuck around for 2 years and then left. So, like you said, maybe with it being an in-state guy, either it's 2 in-state guys or it's 1 national guy and 1 in-state guy. maybe that makes it an easier sell to get someone to stick around a little longer.
I think what you need is a guy like CJ Stroud is like, I don't care who else is in this class. And he has to be the second guy maybe. But you do definitely need that kind of confidence and attitude from one of the guys. And he had it like, yeah, okay, Jack Miller, congrats. Good job on committing. I am also, and he was obviously a late add, somebody that they went on that summer and got him hooked up with the Ohio State commits in the 707s and things like that. But he had no concern about who else was in that class. And maybe that's one of maybe that's the attitude of both of these guys on, whichever two they want, or obviously whichever two want them the most. The question becomes, with Bryce Underwood being like essentially everybody's top target in 2025, if both Brian Montgomery and Tavien St. Clair come in tomorrow and say, I commit, do they take both Ohio kids and then call it a day? I think that's a question that I wonder what Ohio State would do at this point.
Yeah, and I don't know what, are they going to accept both commitments if both guys come in tomorrow and say, we want in? I don't get the sense that either of those is, Ryan Montgomery in particular has been making a lot of visits. So, you wonder, is that someone, in Ryan Montgomery, of course, the younger brother of Luke Montgomery, the current Ohio State freshman offensive lineman. So there's some significant family ties to the program. So, is he ready to commit? Does he want to walk through the recruiting process a little bit more? What is Tavien St. Clair? Was Tavien St. Clair waiting for this Ohio State offer and is immediately going to pounce on it? Or is he maybe going to let the process play out? Because he's someone, I'm going to be talking to Mark Givler for the Friday morning show all about these guys. And Mark has gotten to see these guys in person. I have not seen these two guys throw in person since last summer. And, you've kind of heard that Tavien St. Clair has really improved over the course of the last year. I haven't gotten to see it. I want to kind of hear from Mark. This is one of these, if we know, we'll tell you. I don't know exactly where these two guys are on Ohio State's board right now. Mark, I would guess, would have a better sense of the evaluation of those two guys, where they are right now after that last season. So I'll be interested. We can all find out together when the Friday morning show drops, and I get to ask Mark about all those two guys. But yeah, Bryce Underwood, we're talking about him as a national prospect. He's from Belleville, Michigan, which is suburban Detroit. So that's, this is not exactly someone who's coming from the dark side of the moon. This is someone who's like 3 hours and some change away from Ohio State's campus. So, this is that I would be very interested. I wonder if the offer to Tavien St. Clair is a reflection of what they think their likelihood of getting Bryce Underwood is, or is it a reflection of how improved they view Tavien St. Clair to be, or is it something else entirely?
Is it a Drew Aller thing? Like, we were late on him, and we missed out on that. And maybe if we wouldn't have been late, we've learned our lesson. Let's not be late on the next Ohio kid that we like. And I think they offered Ryan Montgomery very early, and I'm not saying they offered him too early. Clearly, they didn't, because he is a national guy and he is not committed. So the offer they offered him early in terms of when they normally offer in-state kids, and then this one to St. Clair. So it'll be interesting to watch how this plays out. We'll see them both, I'm assuming, at OSU's 7-on-7 and also OSU's camp. They were both in Obetz a few weeks ago at the Under Armour Next camp throwing, as was Bryce Underwood. So a lot of quarterbacks and stuff going on. So yes, check out Buckeyes tomorrow morning, later this afternoon.
It's confusing, but it's for tomorrow, but it's for tomorrow morning, but it's because it's my name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's fine. Wherever fine podcasts are sold, just keep refreshing your podcast feed every 5 minutes until you see it.
That's the only way to be safe.
And then download it on 4 different devices. That's the way you can make sure you don't miss the episode.
Exactly. So, Tom, this is my favorite time of the year. One of my favorite times of the year. It's college football magazine season. And the first one is out. Athlon's national magazine is out. And one of I love about it is that they're all named after the people that wrote it. like Phil Steele's magazine, Street and Smith's, written those two guys, and like Thomas Sporting News. They're all written after the one person who wrote it. Of course, this is no different. I think Mortimer Athlon was the guy.
This is one of these times when I have is he completely making this up? Is there actually a person named Mortimer Athlon? Friends, I'm as baffled as you are. I have no idea.
Did you not hear me say Thomas Sporting News?
Oh no, I did not hear Thomas Sporting News. No.
So anyway, Tom, thank you for that. You have not seen, well, you've seen some of this because I posted some of it on a message board, but I'm always, you take a look, you're like, oh, what sticks out? What is completely wrong or what is worth debating? And as we know, Tom, if it's sports, it's worth debating. They do have a Final Four of Georgia, Bama, Michigan, and USC. They have Michigan beating Alabama in the in the semis, and I do think this is a year where where Alabama could be gotten. I think that is clear. However, if Alabama is good enough to get to the playoffs, I don't see Michigan being good enough to beat them. So I'm not going to say I take umbrage with this. It's just a magazine, as we all know. But they then do have Georgia beating Michigan in the national championship game. I think Georgia right now is it seems to be the safest, easiest pick. I'm interested to see if any other outlets go a different way.
Yeah, I would expect Georgia to sort of be the default answer, because if you pick Georgia, no one's going to say, you idiots, why would you do that? Now, I think there's questions. I think the interior of the Georgia defensive line is probably going to take a step back this year. I think, Stetson Bennett was what he was, but you don't have a returning starter at quarterback this year for Georgia. And you've got, the skill positions at Georgia, the especially the wide receiver units. It's okay, but you went through those games last year and you weren't blown away. They do not have an Ohio State caliber wide receiver core. So, there's questions, but also I think the big question would be who has gotten substantially better that they're going to be so much better than Georgia. I think Alabama has questions this year. Michigan, I think Michigan probably has to show that, when was the last time Michigan won a major game against like a SEC type team? Well, I mean, they beat Florida in one of those bowl, was it like a New Year's Six kind of bowl like 10 years ago, maybe, I think. Or maybe it was even a Citrus Bowl. Maybe I'm thinking of a Citrus Bowl against like an Urban Meyer team. And before that, it was, they beat Alabama in the Orange Bowl when like Tom Brady was still there. But, the Michigan versus Georgia game looked a very specific way. And when Michigan played Alabama in one of those season opening games a couple of years ago, it looked a very specific way. So, I kind of have to see it for Michigan before I would necessarily expect them to beat Alabama. But yeah, outside of Georgia, I think there's legitimate questions with just about every team towards the top of the sport right now. So, Clemson's got question marks, USC has some question marks, and you've got, there are plenty of contenders, but I don't think there is anyone who I would clearly pick to beat Georgia.
I think it's going to be difficult for anybody to come out of the Pac-12 without like 2 losses. USC is obviously going to put up some points. The defense has to be better, he said, questioningly, but knowing better. So I think it's just going to be tough for them to come out, although they are certainly a darling. Some other notes, Marvin and Emeka, first-team All-Americans. JT Tuimoloau, and Tommy Eichenberg, first-team All-Americans. Will Johnson, third-team All-American. I wouldn't be surprised if he's higher than that by the end of the season. I think he is legit. Here's one, Tom. Michigan's defensive line, and I don't want to get too far into our tail of the tape because we'll eventually do that, Ohio State, Michigan, and this will be the most even tail of the tape we've probably ever done when we do it, I think. But this magazine has Michigan's defensive line rated ahead of Ohio State's. They have Mason Graham, a rising sophomore defensive tackle, a second-team All-Big Ten, and Mike Hall, a third-team All-Big Ten guy. They've got no Jack Sawyer on any of their 3 All Big Ten teams. It seems to me that I will take umbrage with this.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I don't pay attention to the postseason All Big Ten teams, the preseason All Big Ten teams from magazines that come out in June and therefore went to press in.
Correct.
I mean, here's what you need to know, like, about these magazines. Like, this is, when they say, people are talking about gambling, it's like for entertainment purposes only, and it's like don't bet based on this. We're just, hey, we're just having fun here. Here's the way the magazine business works. If a magazine is on newsstands before June, it probably needed to be at the publisher sometime before spring ball ended in a lot of places. So if you look at the depth chart for your team and you're like, that's not even close to right. It's like when you watch a movie about or a documentary about a subject you know a lot about, and you're like, that's not right. But then you watch a documentary or something else and you're like, wow, this is incredible information. I had no idea. It's like, if you see something that you know a lot about personally, like, I have worked in this industry for a million years, none of this that's not how any of this works. I think you got to take everything with a grain of salt. And that's not to say don't buy the magazine. That's not to say, there's nothing good in there. It's just, hey, you're just going to take it for what it's worth. And generally, the later in the summer a magazine comes out, the more information from the spring they can sort of incorporate into that magazine, and therefore the more accurate the magazine is going to be. So, yeah, I mean, sure, you can make an argument for that, I think, in terms of Graham being ahead of Hall on the All Big Ten team. Sure, I think that argument probably involves not necessarily understanding that Mike Hall was dealing with injuries a bunch last year, and that's one of those. If you just kind of look at the stats, it's like, oh well, I mean, he was okay, but he wasn't really dominant. And boy, that was his second year. And look at Graham, and he was really good. And okay, and that's fine. Sometimes there's a little bit of a story, a little bit of depth behind something that you don't necessarily pick up on a more surface level examination. Maybe, let's say.
Even Graham had like 8 more tackles, but only like 2.5 tackles for loss and sacks. And of course, we know, Mike Hall had that and against Michigan State. The other thing, the last thing before we go, and this is completely understandable, but it's going to be wrong. They have J.J. McCarthy as the first team All Big Ten quarterback. That is the best. That is the most sure thing that you can put in a preseason magazine. And they have Kyle McCord, third team. However, if you have decided that Kyle McCord is your starter and you think he's going to be good enough to be third team, here's a surprise. He's going to be good enough to be your first team quarterback and first team All Big Ten quarterback because of the offense and because of the stats that they'll be putting up. And I know you love J.J. McCarthy and people love him. But just statistically, if you think Kyle McCord is going to be the guy, then like logically, I completely understand this, and it is correct. I'm just telling you, and we did this back in 2019. Maybe it was between Shea Patterson and Justin Fields. Like, well, of course you have to side with the experience of the Michigan quarterback, but just know by the end of the season we're going to have to give the nod to Ohio State. Tom, can you tell me the last non-Ohio State quarterback to be All Big Ten first team?
Oh boy. So I'm gonna say CJ Stroud got it both of his years, Justin Fields got it both of his years, Dwayne Haskins got it his year. JT Barrett probably got it at least in did JT Barrett get it in 17?
Mm-hmm.
In 16?
Mm-hmm.
So was it someone in 2015 or did
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 2015.
And only because Ohio State had a quarterback problem.
A quarterback split, yeah. 2015. Boy, this is a disturbingly long time ago. Was it, who was the Iowa quarterback that transferred to Michigan? Was it Jake Rudock that year?
That would have been good to guess. I think he may have been, let me see, he wasn't even second team that year.
I'm trying to think of who was good in 2015 and
who was good at shoving Archie Griffin out of the way.
Oh, was it Connor Cook?
In fact, it was. First team by both the coaches and the media. Second team was C.J. Beathard, which is why Jake Rudock transferred. Third team, the great Nate Sudfeld.
Yeah, so Michigan State, Iowa, and Indiana. That is, in terms of quarterbacks in the Big Ten over the last decade or so, that is very much who are three people who have never been in my kitchen. That is, can you imagine, Tony, an Iowa quarterback being second team All Big Ten in the year of our Lord 2023? Can you imagine such a thing? Do you think Cade McNamara is destined for second team All Big Ten honors this year?
Hey, he's one of the few quarterbacks, he's only one of two quarterbacks in the Big Ten to have led their teams, currently in the Big Ten, to have led their teams to the playoffs. So I think you better put some respect on his name. So that was 2015. Do you know the time prior to that a non-Ohio State quarterback was first team All Big Ten? And no, you will not.
I'm going to guess it was 2011.
And who was that quarterback?
Was that Devin Gardner? No, he wasn't. Was he the quarterback in 2011?
No,
that was Denard Robinson. Was it Denard Robinson in 2011?
No, it was not. Former baseball player from North Carolina State.
Oh, Russell Wilson. You said former baseball player who's a quarterback in 2011, and I'm like, I'm sure it was not Joe Bowserman. I'm extremely sure it was not Joe Bowserman.
Clayton
Russell
Richard?
Wilson. Yeah, that's right.
But in fact, he is not the correct answer. You have to go back 1 year later, 2012.
Ah, okay.
Because he shared it. This person shared it with Braxton Miller. Braxton was first team media. This quarterback was first team coaches. Who was it?
2012. So it wouldn't have been anyone from Penn State. I don't think it would have been anyone from Michigan, because that would have been Devin Gardner's first year, right? Was that Devin Gardner's first year starting at Michigan?
So. And he struggled.
Was this like this is one of these things where Mitch Leidner has no object permanence in my brain, and like he might have played in 2005, he might have played in 2015. Like, was it one of these stupid like Minnesota quarterbacks who was like a thing for just like 6 months?
No, but I will give you his stats. He threw for 2,871 yards with 23 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, and ran the ball 195 times for 1,019 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Taylor Martinez?
Yes.
Wow. That's oh yeah, because that was the year, right? That was the year that Nebraska went to the Big Ten championship game, right? Or was that 2011?
I think it was 11.
That was 11. Okay. Yeah, well, Taylor Martinez was there for 16 years, so he's a good guess almost no matter what. So yeah, Taylor Martinez, boy, 23 touchdowns and 12 picks for the first team all conference quarterback is that is quite a time and a place that is different from the present day. That's a good way to peg things in the medium to distant past.
No, you're right, Tom. That was Nebraska in the Big Ten championship game. Of course, they struggled a little bit against Wisconsin.
Yeah, well, that was largely a defensive issue. I believe they put up 31 points in that game, yes, if I recall correctly. Did they get doubled up? Listen, shh, it's fine. Nebraska made the Big Ten championship game. That makes them legends and or leaders. So, yeah, that was the year that, and it was like an 8-5 Wisconsin team, because that was the year that Ohio State wasn't eligible, Penn State wasn't eligible, Michigan wasn't any good, and that was Michigan was in the other division, right? Yeah. Oh, man, speaking of a very specific time and place, but yeah, Ohio State and Penn State, I think both finished like 1-2 in the division that year, and third place Wisconsin at whatever 8-5 or 7-4
in the conference.
4-4 in the conference, just annihilates Nebraska in the Big Ten championship game, and gets to go to the Rose Bowl because no one does anything better than Wisconsin just falling ass backwards into Rose Bowl somehow. It's just like the universe just aligns for Wisconsin, and then prior to them, it just did that for Northwestern for a couple of years. Just everything falls into place, so they get to go to the Rose Bowl. Yeah,
Nebraska went 7-1 in the Big Ten that year. Their lone loss, of course, at Ohio State, 63-38. So that will go ahead, Tom. You got anything else that you want to throw in there?
famous defensive coordinator Bo Pelini giving up 63 and 70 points in the same season in conference play in a year when he only lost 2 games in conference play. That is an entire mood. How did 9-4 end up being Bo Pelini Day? Well, defense was involved. We can say that for sure.
Yeah, they also lost at UCLA the second game of the season, 36-30, and then they lost their bowl game, the Citrus Bowl, 45-31 against number 6 Georgia. That was a long time ago, back when like 6 coaches ago, I think, for Nebraska. In fact, but anyway, Matt Rule's got them on the right path now. I'm sure we haven't seen any evidence of it, but we know Matt Rule has done things before, and I'm sure he will do things again. So thank you all for joining us today. As always, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. As Tom said at the start of the show, and then I also echoed those sentiments. Join, become a member, say hello to us there on the message board. Check out all the premium content that we have for you as well. Find us at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Find us at facebook.com. Look for Buckeye Huddle there as well. Go ahead and like and subscribe to that page as well if you would care to. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.